Anyway, I saw this headline here, and I thought that might be a good video to react to.
An update with our friend and colleague Stanislav Krapivnik. Stas, welcome back.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Great having you back, and we want to talk a little bit about the position of Russia today, and also how maybe the most recent MOU between Iran and the United States is now impacting the logic or the thinking of Moscow. Stas, what are the updates from your end? I was also in Russia.
Yeah, well, I haven't covered Russia that much recently, and so I sort of want to get a feel for how close they are to bombing Europe.
I was also in Moscow, and actually my flight back to Switzerland was delayed because of drone attacks on Moscow. These drone attacks are getting more and more, and we've had last night a big one again. What is the mood at the moment?
Angry. The mentality that
If I'm angry about it, just about the inaction of the Russia government, imagine people who actually are in Russia and have to deal with these drone attacks.
or the European mentality that the narrative that Putin just woke up one day and he wanted to invade Ukraine just for, pardon my French.
That's
shits and giggles.
nonsense.
That's an old American saying. And then just make it painful enough, and Russia will back off because it's just not worth it. Again avoiding, of course, the absolute point that this is an existential crisis for Russia. NATO nuclear missiles on its borders, as Blinken flat out said to Lavrov before all this started, we'll put whatever missiles we want on your border, whatever nuclear missiles, and there's nothing you can do about it. Well, yes, there is, and that's how all of this started. That is, of course, being ignored by the Europeans and the Americans to a lesser degree.
Just another thing that Asmongold doesn't know, for example.
At one point, Marco Rubio did admit that this was a proxy war. The Europeans, of course, don't want to even admit that, but Europe is long past being a proxy war. Europe is an active military participant. And the pressure on Moscow is to strike Europe and strike it fast and strike it hard. As I said before, with Europe going into mass production of these drones, I mean, these drones...
Yeah, my only question about the Russian situation is why haven't they done that yet? Because now that there's that licensing agreement between the United States and Ukraine, Ukraine can now import, all the countries of Europe can just give their US-made long-range missiles over to Ukraine. Ukraine will slap a coat of paint on it, put a Ukrainian flag, and launch them deep into Russia. And Russia just lets all of Europe send all their weapons to be launched from Ukraine and doesn't strike back at all. I mean, eventually they'll start hitting stuff that matters.
But not produced by Ukraine. I mean, let's just put that myth to rest. They may be assembled in Ukraine as the destruction of the warehouse, the movie film warehouse proved by Ukraine's own stupidity when they were claiming that Russia just struck a warehouse full of old movies, and as they're filming, as their camera's filming, there's a whole set of wings under the rubble for drones, which they then try to scrub off the videos, but the internet never forgets. So the lesson is triple check before you put something up on the internet.
Yeah, and I think that the least amount of manufacturing and assembling possible is done in Ukraine because if it's in Ukraine, Russia can take it out, the factories. It's the factories in Europe that Russia has not been attacking yet.
But the Ukrainians do these kinds of mistakes constantly. So that most of these drones are put together in Ukraine. They're produced in Europe, quite flat out in Europe. So what we're looking at is, as I said before, the Europeans have gone into overdrive to try to break Russia I'm assuming under the assumption that they think this is just a war of expansion because Putin just decided it, ignoring the entire narrative. If they're not ignoring the narrative, if they're just, if they're not buying the narrative and they're just ignoring their own role in all this, then they're doubly stupid. So the Russians, as I've said before, Russia at this point has a choice: either a conventional war with Europe or a nuclear war with the Northern Hemisphere. I'm not quite sure which one we're going to be going down, which route.
I think the conventional war is the first option, and the second option is what we want to try to avoid escalating to.
Because, as I've said, the number of production of drones is increasing, and the waves are getting bigger. And they can always make a big enough wave soon.
And they're getting bigger and bigger, and there's going to be missiles added to the mix soon. So, yeah, doesn't matter how good the Russian air defenses is. Russia is a massive country. And not only does it have to worry about drones launched from Ukraine, now NATO, Europe has started launching drones from the Baltic states to attack northern targets. And defending against all that, this huge territory, it's just not possible, no matter how good your air defenses is. These drones fly extremely low to the ground. So they avoid a lot of radars. And if you fly that low to the ground, you need actual... The air defenses need to be really close to wherever the drones pass over to actually shoot them down. That means you'll need a hell of a lot of air defenses, more than Russia can have for the enormous amount of territory it needs to protect.
Sooner or later, to overpower any anti-aircraft system, which was...
And that the reason I am upset with what Putin is doing is just don't wait till it gets to the point where they overwhelm your air defenses. It's just about reaching that point now. They double the amount of drones from here and start adding missiles, and then you start taking catastrophic damage. And that's the time you decide to escalate with Europe, when your factories are already getting bombed to the ground. And you don't wait for the worst. It's so stupid.
This is what happened. The majority of the drones were destroyed, but when the missiles ran out on the Panzer units and they had to be reloaded, is when the next wave that came through. Sorry, go ahead.
Are there any talks about the war in Ukraine, the military operation?
Stanislav is a commentator I've watched several times, and he's been accurate so far. He's in Russia, I think. Russian-born military political analyst and former U.S. Army officer. Born in Ludensk, Donbass region. Oh, so this is personal for him. During the Soviet era, he migrated to the U.S. as a child, served in U.S. military, and eventually returned to Russia. So I value his opinions.
There, that once the Lugansk and Donetsk and the Donbass entirely is consolidated, that then it might be possible for Russia to somehow create a security parameter or something. And it seems that these drones are actually changing forcing a change of the calculation, right? I mean, winning the war on the battlefield is not going to be enough anymore in order to stop the drones.
Yeah, it's not.
Winning the war on the battlefield is what...
It is a long-term goal, but the drones are being launched from like up here to be able to go deep in Russia. At the amount of time, it'll still take like over a year to get to there. And the amount of damage those drones can do with 1 year, especially if the numbers are increasing and they're adding missiles, it's not viable. You need to shut down the factories producing the drones to minimize the damage. And since those factories are in Europe, you need to shoot at Europe.
The government has now decided negotiations are pointless. They'll still listen to the Europeans once in a while when they call up.
Yeah, this is Deep State Map. This is a site run by Ukrainian affiliated, so they're slow to show the Russian advance. But other than that, it's really good. And this is a Russian-controlled area, and they have nearly captured all of the 4 territories they're going for. You see this section here? That's practically the only... This section here is the only place that they need to get. They're very close to achieving their initial war objectives. But I don't think at this point they're stopping. They're going all the way to Odessa afterwards. And it's going to start moving at a different pace. These fortress towns that Ukraine built these bunkers in over like a decade. Once those are gone, they're going to move faster.
Whatever inane remarks they have. But the question isn't whether the battlefield victory is no longer the aim, because it actually wasn't the aim originally. It is, I think, now the aim. But the question is, what does that constitute? Consolidating Donetsk, Lugansk has already been freed. Consolidating Donetsk, Kherson, and Zaporozhye is not enough, obviously. I think the realization is finally starting to hit in that no matter what is left of Ukraine, it's just going to be used as a terrorist base. What is not being told
if Russia decides, okay, we got what we want, we stop. No, Ukraine is just going to be through drones attacking Russia constantly, going terrorist attacks. Unless they take out the government in Kiev, Russia will never have peace.
When you were in Russia recently, maybe you saw it on the news, is the total switch toward terrorism. Absolute abject terrorism by the West and their proxy in Ukraine. And I'm going to say
Yeah, attacking a school dorm, a girls' school dorm in Donbass, and double tapping it. I think maybe even triple tapping it, if I remember right, and killing 21 college-age girls. That's not a valid military target. Attacking a school bus and killing 4 children, not a military target.
the West, because the West is absolutely guilty and swimming in Russian blood. It's the West that's producing these drones. It's the West that's enabling the terrorism. And just a few incidents, just to run down a few incidents outside of the strike on Moscow, which, except for a couple strikes on the Moscow oil refinery, which were strikes. If you look at it, they weren't strikes in the refinery. They were strikes on the storage facilities. There's
the big round tanks that store oil that are next to the refineries. That they're one of the preferred Ukrainian targets because they go boom in a big fireball, and it's very visually spectacular. And people like Asmongold go, "Wow!" So it's effective propaganda. But storage tanks are much, much easier to replace than the actual refinery equipment. So the damage is much less than it seems visually.
Picture one of the lids flying off. These are relatively easy to replace. Refineries, like I've said many times, are very difficult to destroy. They're easy to damage, but they're equally easy to repair. And the problem is, pipes, blasted pipes with no fire don't make a good picture for Western media. That's why they strike the storage facilities. They go boom,
exactly,
really big, and it makes a big picture, which then the West spreads all over.
And it just look at the Asmongold's video. It just he's seeing that lid fly way up in the sky. He's like all impressed. You just hit a storage tank.
So to keep from having to talk about Konstantinovka falling, from Druzhinka, which is the southern town of the Druzhinka Kramatorsk Slavinsk agglomeration being surrounded now from 2
Yeah, you weren't pulled up, so it probably wasn't him. Yeah.
sides. Russia's breaking through north into it from Dobropolye. Then they've broken away, started going north, so they're coming up behind this conglomeration. And then there's Russian forces about 6 kilometers away from Kramatorsk itself, and Slavinsk. And Krasny Liman is basically almost fully in Russian hands, which opens.
He's talking about what's going on the front lines, and no one, I expect in our chat, knows any of the villages he's talking about, but he's from the Donbass. I'm sure it means a lot to him.
Up strikes directly on the Slavics from the north. So they keep talking from that, or the Ryakov is surrounded from 3 directions, or that it's while Russian forces are quite up to Ryakov itself, they're about 5 kilometers out. Drone-wise, Ryakov is, and artillery-wise, it's in full tactical surround, or fully tactically surrounded. And cut off by drones and artillery.
Yeah, about getting banned, who knows? I really don't know. It could be just someone else was saying something bad, and they banned everyone who was saying anything at least similar in any way.
On N08 highway. So that's the last, in Zaporozhye, in central Zaporozhye, it's the last big fortress that's been fortified town. After that, it's just villages up to Zaporozhye city itself. Or that Russian forces are now within about 5 kilometers of Sumy. To keep talking that, they've moved into total terrorism. And just as a few examples of terrorism, first of all, those flights, the majority of the drones that did get through, they weren't striking oil refineries. They were striking apartment buildings.
Yeah, because that also makes a big splashy visual. If they struck houses or something lower to the ground, you probably get a lot less videos of it. But the drone flying up high, people with their phones following the drone and falling right into the apartment building, you strike apartment buildings, you'll get a lot of footage out of that. And that's what Ukraine was going for.
I don't know if I sent you one of the videos. You might have seen them. I mean, these drones, they're not falling on apartment buildings. They're not clipping up apartment buildings by mistake. They're targeted directly into the center of apartment buildings, large apartment buildings. Occasionally, single family residence houses too. Also, sorry about that. But a quick rundown on just a few terrorist incidents over the last.
It's not leveling. These drones aren't powerful enough to level the building. They just do a big hole in the side of it, and injure, possibly kill the people in the apartment building. This isn't drones. One thing about drones, they don't carry as much explosives as like a missile per se. So there's no way they can take down an apartment building. They just make a big boom and damage the building.
2 weeks. Well, we all know about Starobisk, except in the West, nobody knows about Starobisk. That's the dormitory, 21 children killed, 19 girls, 3 boys, 40 plus injured, 16 drones. So when the West was finally trying to acknowledge that, well, yeah, it's something, the rocket went off course or something didn't go right. No, it's 16 drones. Yeah. Plus recon drones are reconning it for half a day before the strike. So no, this isn't accidentally it went off, or the AI. The typical excuse now for the Nuremberg trials of, well, I was just following orders, that got a lot of Nazis hung. Unfortunately, the majority of Nazis has got recycled by America and Britain into power in West Germany, and we see the results of that now. The excuse was I was just following orders. Now the excuse is, well, the AI told me to do it.
Yeah, that's not going to go down well. I killed all those innocent people because the AI told me to.
Yeah,
that's the modern.
It's a very bad joke. It's not a joke. It's the same with Iran, and the same with everything that's happening. Oh, yeah. I mean, the Western alliances keep killing civilians at massive scale, and either blame the enemy for it, or blame AI, or blame fallen.
Yeah, that schoolgirl in Iran, U.S. still hasn't taken any accountability for that.
It's anything but admitting that they are intentionally targeting civilians as part of a terrorist attrition campaign.
And when they finally, a few times they finally come to answer for their crimes, it's always, well, I didn't do it. I was just following orders, or the AI told me, or there was a loose, pardon my French, a loose hair up my arse, and I just pushed the wrong button. That's anything but to take accountability for their murderous actions. That's what we see about modern Western civilization. Anything but to take responsibility. They'll happily murder, pillage, and rape, but it's not our fault. It's always somebody else.
To tell you the truth, I don't think that's unique to Western civilization. I think there are bastards around the world that have been behaved like that for a long, long time. I had to go in and level and rape that city. It was the gods told me to.
PTSD. It's the weather. It's the flies. It's the AI. It's anything but us. Actually, just this is our nature, and this is why we're murdering and pillaging.
There was this other instance just last week that I think people don't get just how impactful it is. There was the Ukrainian drones then blowing up this big war memorial in Sevastopol.
Yes.
A piece of art, a piece of culture, a piece of...
Oh, that ticks me off. Destruction of art ticks me off so bad. Property you can repair, but art, I want someone... hang for that.
Second World War memory, or Great Patriotic War memory.
No. It's from the Crimean War.
Sorry, the Crimean War. Yeah.
In World War II, actually, the Nazis also bombed it in 1941.
I'm joking. I don't actually want someone hanged for destroying a piece of art. I want them put in jail.
Sorry, that was
the previous Nazis.
But it's hard. I think one of the things I understood after 1 week in Russia is how much value Russians attach to culture and to this kind of...
Yeah, the rest of Europe also used to value culture. Then they started being taught in school that you're evil being white, and white culture is evil. And we should import unlimited people. And fuck your culture.
Of memory of the past. So blowing this thing up has zero battlefield value. All it does is make Russia angry, right? And Russians angry. Is that about it?
Right.
You know what? Russia's probably the one white place on Earth where there's practically no woke shit. That means you don't... all across Europe, yes, you have base people, but you also have tons of insane woke people, even in Eastern Europe, like Poland. You have Project Red that's gone woke. But I think Russia is somewhat insulated from that.
And then other incidents to follow, for example, CCTV is everywhere these days. So whether it's just private cameras on houses, whether it's traffic cameras, so on. So you see all these videos. You have to get pretty far away from a town or a village to be camera free. So all of this gets caught. We've had attacks on one. They took out 2 buses. One bus. This was a week ago.
Yeah.
One bus, thankfully, nobody was injured. And second bus, 8 people burnt to death, 11 people injured out of 46. It was an overnight bus going through a town, and you see the drone, an FPV drone, one of the big ones with the big battery.
A civilian overnight bus. And how is that a valid target? It's not.
Block on it. They can go pretty far, going directly into the bus, into the side of the bus, as the bus is driving down the street. Then there was attacks on children. There was one video where 4 teenagers in a car, they screech to a halt in front of the house, and they all run in, and the drone follows them in. Thankfully, they got the door closed when the drone hit the door, so nobody was injured. Then there was another one with a 12 and a 13-year-old that were killed on a bicycle, because, this is Ukraine, this is the West, this is murder incorporated. This is what, like it or not, these are Western values.
Yeah.
Why? Because this.
How in the world? Why in the world, for one military purpose, would you be targeting children on bicycles?
What the values the West projects everywhere around the world: murder, mayhem, destruction of children, be it through various procedures.
Unfortunately, this is true. The Western media just doesn't cover it.
Be it through direct murder, whatever. The West is. I mean, this is the Epstein class's values that's projected.
That's a great way to put it.
Yesterday, or 2 days ago, there was a Belarusian bus that was hit with a kid's soccer team on their football team. They just switched on the cartoons. I mean, to understand the age of these children, they just switched on the cartoons as they were driving. The coach's wife was killed, 2 adults were heavily injured, and 4 children.
That's the one I mentioned.
Lukashenko, I don't know what his reaction is. So far, it's just been a mean note to Ukraine. So I guess Lukashenko.
All these attacks he's talking about, that's the reason why an attack against Europe is inevitable this year at this point. And the factories making these drones are in Europe. The ones doing the targeting, that's the United States. And it's not the Ukrainians. Ukraine is just the launching platform.
Because for all his big talk is not going to do anything about it. And this was specifically targeted bus. They just gone from Belarus into Russia, into Bryansk. They were heading to the south toward the Black Sea. There's been attacks on. I mean, in Belgrade, there's a video of an FPV drone striking a truck at a red light.
And it's impossible to defend against this. I mean, the size of Russia. They can maybe defend critical installations and stuff, but if they're just targeting people on bicycles anywhere in the countryside, there's no way to stop that. Only way to stop that is to bomb the factories making the drones.
Traffic stop, killing the driver, just flying right into his front windshield, and so on and so on. I mean, these videos are all over the place. The Ukraine has turned from partially being a terrorist outfit to being a full terrorist outfit, under the control of, let's not mince words, under the control of the 3 supreme terrorist organizations of this planet, CIA, MI6, and Mossad. Basically,
yep, Mossad's involved too. Absolutely,
we all work as one organization. They're the ones that created the SBU, the modern SBU. They're the ones that. The plan, the original plan in the U.S. Was for Russia to provoke Russia enough for it to grab Ukraine, grab all of Ukraine fast and hard, and then start a partisan guerrilla war that would bleed Russia for years. They didn't quite get that. What they got was a war of attrition, and basically everybody that could have been volunteered up for partisan duty is now dead. And the people that are alive, and once this conflict is actually over, if they're still alive, they're going to be just very happy to still be alive, let alone to start something else up. So now they've turned to terrorism.
What does this do? I mean, this type of warfare is, of course, the kind of warfare of the losing end, right? But it is something that
yep.
extracts a very heavy toll on Russia, on Russian society.
It's unsustainable, especially when it's an increasing intensity. This isn't like one terrorist organization or just one country, Ukraine. This is all of Europe making drones and sending them to Ukraine. And in some cases, Ukraine isn't even involved. European drones launched from European territories into Russia. EU is already at war with Russia.
Society on the civil population, which increases the pressure on the government to do something and to go even further out. And in my view, what they're trying to do is to provoke Russia into a next big escalation, so attacking NATO territory. Because, like, let's look.
Yeah, I know that they're trying to do this, but at this point, the drone attacks are unsustainable. And they're intensifying, and now they're going to add missiles to the mix. Russia is going to have to intensify. It's going to have to strike NATO. The thing is, if Putin doesn't do it now and instead does it in like 4 or 5 months after, missiles and drones rain down on Russia for 5 more months, Russia's going to take a huge amount of damage, and you're going to end up exact same place. So why delay it? Deal with it right away.
Look at it realistically. The only thing that could hypothetically still turn things around is an all-out European NATO war against Russia, right? And this is what Zelensky and Ukraine wanted from the beginning. 2 years ago, when a Ukrainian missile killed 2 Polish farmers, the first thing the guy said is that this is an Article 5, you all must come to war with us. The Europeans very quickly shut him down. And NATO, for the longest time, shut this down because the one thing that Russia and the Europeans seem to have agreed upon is that the war in Ukraine remains inside Ukraine and should not spill over. But Europe has now worked bit by bit of trying to salami slice this agreement into, no, we are expanding it into Russia, but not into...
Yeah, we're allowed to hit you, but you're not allowed to hit us.
To Europe. And this is of course, a game of fire, with fire. As soon as Russia decides that, no, if we are bleeding and we get blow up, we will blow up you, well, then we will have an all-European war, and we are not that far away from it.
What Iran did was very effective when it targeting the Gulf states. So when you have that successful strategy by Iran just there, and seeing how it completely worked out in Iran's favor, Putin's just fucking around and just letting Russians die looks so pathetically weak.
Not anymore, are we?
No, we're not. We're on the edge of it. And honestly speaking, from day one, I was saying... when Slovakia, under the previous government, gave weapons over, the first heavy weapons over to Ukraine, I said from the very beginning, you need to hit Slovakia. We need to hit Slovakia very, very hard. And this...
Yeah, just no red lines were ever enforced by Russia. I mean, Putin is just like... just a little chicken, whatever. He refuses to do anything. To some extent, it's worked up till now. And... so I'll give him that. But now, yeah. Now it's time to enforce your red lines.
All would have been avoided. Why Slovakia? Because Slovakia is a small country, and NATO would have gone, oh, that's not us. We were never for that. That's those idiot Slovaks. We told them not to do that. Well, they still did it. Okay, well, but Russia didn't do that. And everybody went, okay, so they didn't hit Slovakia, so the gates of hell opened up. And off we went on the escalation.
He's right.
Ladder. It's not even a ladder, it's an escalator. Escalator that's going at full speed. Now, an interesting thing about Ukraine that you mentioned, that Ukraine killed 2 Poles. Ukraine's actually attacked NATO on continuous times. It's an interesting concept, how many civilians and how much infrastructure has been destroyed by NATO. To show, in NATO, in the EU by Ukraine, just to show you how pathetic these organizations are. They're quite willing to sacrifice their people in mass. Ukraine has hit oil refineries in Hungary, Slovakia, Romania. Ukraine sabotage units have hit other infrastructure. They've killed...
They disabled Nord Stream, probably with CIA help.
Hit multiple ships in territorial waters of Turkey coming out of the Bosphorus Straits. They've hit a Turkish-flagged tanker. They've sunk a Turkish cutter, military cutter. And the Turks, Erdogan... Yes, they
remember that one.
Yeah, that was about a month ago. Luckily for them, Erdogan has removed his...
Oh, thanks for the follow. Los Ratones. And nice to have you here.
Spine, separate the vertebrae and put one vertebrae in every chair he can sit in, because his arse isn't big enough to cover all those chairs. Erdogan is a spineless profiteer. All the things he said about, stopping the Israelis while sending 57 oil tankers to Israel, redirecting. Erdogan...
Yeah, Erdogan, yeah. The
Lost_Ratonas.
back in 208, bro was unk in 208. Yep. I that's when I started covering things, all the way back then.
Erdogan is a good Muppet and nothing more. As a great sultan in Turkey. So even though the Ukrainians are carrying out direct attacks on Turks on a NATO country, it's all okay.
Yeah.
I mean, then again, they've struck a Greek.
Again, one reason it's okay is the media doesn't report it. No one hears about Ukraine attacking a Turkey ship, so there's no outrage over it.
Tanker before that was coming in to get refilled or to get filled up with oil off of the Caspian consortium, the Caspian Oil Authority. Caspian Oil Authority, Caspian Oil Consortium, which is, by the way, is majority owned by Chevron. They've damaged that equipment, but the Greeks are just the same thing. The Greek government is an occupation government that doesn't give a damn what the people want. So obviously,
that pretty much applies to all of Europe right now. In nearly no European state do they want mass migration. Yet, why in every state is there mass migration?
That's Western democracy. But the most interesting attempt at mass murder by Ukraine, and this would have been mass murder, was Romania. Remember those 4 drones that got away from Ukraine? When the aviation drones are coming in into areas like St. Petersburg, are trying to come in from Finland and from Latvia and Lithuania. And I'm saying from.
I always was interested in, originally how the financial system works. Then I got into this side of things because they're connected. The world politics have a huge impact on financial system, like the closure of Strait of Hormuz. That's going to wreck the global economy.
Not through. Definitely from Latvia. What the Russian electronic warfare does is it breaks their encryption and it pumps in new coordinates and just turns them around. But that's right on the border, right? So they're not flying very far. What the Ukrainians are saying is these drones were supposed to go to Crimea, and they accidentally wound up in Consta, Romania, but several hundred kilometers. Well, there's been a guy by the name of Mikhail Luska, who is head of the PPR party in Romania.
I haven't heard this story yet, so I'm actually really interested in it.
Romania, former member of parliament, and he's not the only one, but he is probably the loudest one who's flat out said, we just avoided mass murder by Ukraine. The drones were aiming at 2 facilities in the Port of Costa, the oil storage facility and the fertilizer facility, the nitrate storage. Remember the explosion in Beirut?
Yeah. Yeah.
The only thing that stopped these drones was the spill buoys, these long buoys.
Europe has mass migration because the welfare, like you have these migrants that come in to say, "Oh, I need asylum," and they're given a free apartment. I almost want to go to UK and claim asylum myself just to get a free flat to live in. It's insane. So that's reason 1. Reason 2, they're not sending anyone back. They never send anyone back. You commit crimes, you commit rape, you can stay. They never send anyone back. So, of course, people try to sneak in. If they actually deported people and people realize, oh, I might have to pay like $6,000 to a human trafficker, and then I might just get caught and sent back right away, well, then less people would be paying human traffickers. So that's the other reason. The not having enough babies, that has nothing to do with it. That's look at Japan. Japan does not have enough babies more than any Western country, and they don't have mass migration. Not having babies has jack shit to do with mass migration. And the reason people aren't having enough babies is because of the endless genders and the feminism that you can't rely on a man. You can never... The feminists today basically is you're not allowed to love a man, because if you love a man, you'll depend on them. So it rejects the fundamental... It fundamentally rejects the union between a man and a woman. And stuff like that, taught in colleges, that's what reduces the birth rate.
For any spilled oil, since oil is lighter than water.
Oh, and also like, oh, the world is going to end because of global warming. You shouldn't have kids type deal. Though they were saying that like 20 years ago too, and not one of the warnings about global warmings has ever come true.
Water and floats, they put these out, and they had been put out near the oil storage facility just in case, as a precaution. And one of those drones got stuck in it. And luckily, before they could blow those drones, people showed up and they started videotaping that. Because if those drones...
In every country, even our messed up Western democracies, there are good people that are working hard, and lots of them. And that's why it upsets me so much when I see those same people, good, hardworking people, like being beheading attempts and stuff like that towards them. It annoys, it angers me.
Drones that exploded, you wouldn't have found any pieces of those drones that to prove that it was Ukrainians. There's another false flag that would have killed half the city of Kotsta. A mass casualty event for the Romanians to try to get Romania into the war and NATO into the war. So Ukraine and the three terrorist organizations, CIA, MI6, Mossad, are out of control, totally out of control.
But now, how do you think
that has been true for decades? Except nowadays, because of the spread of cameras, cell phones, we find out a lot more. And the breakdown in media's control, like Free X.
Russia will actually approach that? Because, if Russia does nothing, then this terrorist tactics will succeed in grinding down Russia. And if Russia actually does attack NATO territory and these facilities in which parts of these drones are being...
If Russia does attack, yes, it's what US wants or what the CIA, whatever wants, but it's not going to work. Like, CIA wanted Trump to attack Iran. Did that work out for the CIA Mossad? No, it backfired hugely. So yes, the CIA Mossad want Russia to strike back against Europe, but it's not going to work out for them. Not there either.
Being manufactured, then they also win, because then they get the big war. It's kind of a very, very sick way of escalating or closing all doors to non-escalation, actually.
Right. Well, if I personally prefer the conventional war, we'll win the conventional war because the alternative is a nuclear war. And that's just quite simply, that is the only two-state solution right there. Either state one is a conventional war, state two is a nuclear war. There is no other way out. That the Europeans are either too psychopathic. The European population is clueless, except for the people that listen to your show and other shows like that.
No, they're utterly clueless, and I just need to throw...
Yeah. Russia will strike NATO. The only question is when.
Is in here. On the one hand, we have Mr. Karaganov and on Glenn Beeson's show talking about the fact that his argument...
And that's one reason, despite Trump's letting himself be tricked into the Iran war, I'm still glad he's president, is I think nuclear war with Russia is less likely with him as president. I should watch Predictive History, Professor Jung. Well, maybe we can watch it after this.
Argument of doing a limited nuclear strike is now gaining currency in Russia, and there was a very interesting debate actually also with John Mearsheimer recently. But on the one hand, we have that. On the other hand, we have the Europeans who are utterly clueless. I was listening to a show of Swiss TV because that's one of the things I could still listen to, and they were discussing about the morals behind maybe exporting weapons to Ukraine. The Swiss currently don't do it, but there was this discussion: should we not? The morals of it. Not once within an hour it crossed their minds to go through the argument that if Switzerland sends weapons to Ukraine and these weapons are used to kill Russians, then maybe the Russians are just gonna Oreshnik Switzerland, or at least the facilities where this is being done. That didn't even come up once. That's the level to which Europe at the moment, including Switzerland, has lost all kind of ability to think about war in a realist framework. And it makes zero sense to me, but that's just a piece of information of how far down a very sick rabbit hole we are in.
Switzerland especially is vulnerable because it's not part of NATO. Russia could have Rushnik the factories in Switzerland, and Switzerland has no way to fight back. And is United States going to go to war for someone who isn't even a member of NATO? No. Switzerland is neutral. It shouldn't be sending weapons to anyone. Or at least become part of NATO. I'd be completely against that. So just don't send weapons to anyone, Switzerland.
Europe.
And for that, Glenn got a mention by Minister of Defense Tore Sandvik, Minister of Defense of Norway, when he was asked about Russian influence and who was influencing Russian influence in Norway. He flat out said Professor Glenn Beeson. So now Glenn has been mentioned as a direct
He's one of the commentators I watch, Glenn Deason.
threat to the Norwegian government by the Norwegian government for, doing things like, stating the obvious.
Yes, stating reality is being pro-Russia. And it's just like like the Iran war, stating the obvious there. It makes you pro-Iranian.
We may be in a war. Do we really want to do this?
We, on our side, with a megaphone, as many as we can find, we keep warning that we are walking, not sleepwalking, like we are like wide awake and walking straight into a pool of blood, our own blood. That's gonna be. And these people.
Yep. That is a very good way to say it. That is what Europe is doing. You have the corrupt globalist leaders that are walking Europe into a pool of blood, and the media is covering this up, and it's going to be all shocked when Russia attacks. Evil Russia. They attacked us for no reason at all.
People, they think that this is Russian propaganda. So this is how far this psychosis has already twisted people and shut them off from the obvious. You could show them a knife, they would claim it's an ice cream and the blade. It's insane.
The problem again with mass psychosis, which your guest and I can't remember the professor's name.
Yes, Esmond.
Mikey says I need to talk to him sometime too. What he didn't go into is how do you break a mass psychosis? You cannot break a mass psychosis by itself. It'll either wind down.
No, you have. It's not only a mass psychosis. It's intentional propaganda campaign, a multi-decade propaganda campaign by Western media, and it's only a collapse in trust in Western media, and switch to alternatives like neutrality studies and getting the actual truth. That's the only solution, and it's still going to take time for that.
When the population ages out. If you look at the Iranian government, yes, there was a mass psychosis at the beginning of the Iranian government. The Iranian government's liberalized since then. I mean, when Americans say we're going to come to free their women by blowing them up, but so they can not have to cover their heads. Well, they already don't have to cover their heads. It's liberalized. Soviet Union went through the same thing. Soviet Union was a radical the state that used state terror and oppression to control the people.
Yeah.
Post-World War.
Oh, today Russia is a very nice place to live. I lived there for 2 years. 9 years ago or something.
War II, that went down quite a bit, or during World War II.
Actually, 11, longer than that.
Then post-World War II. And even Khrushchev's new campaign, which Stalin, by the way, stopped all the campaigns versus the church. Quite the opposite. The Komsomol movement, the young communist movement, was sent to rebuild churches, including the cathedrals of the patriarchy in Sergei Posad. That was rebuilt by the young communists in 1946, 1947. The drive on the church started again under Khrushchev, but it was a different drive. It wasn't.
I actually went there while I was posting about ESF. I feel a lot safer talking about fraud in the U.S. system and the ESF when I was in Russia.
Concentration or gulags. They weren't concentration camps. They were gulags, labor camps. It wasn't. They said it was a propaganda war. And when Khrushchev was removed by the Politburo, one of the points for his removal was excess pressure on the church. So it started mellowing out at that point because that revolutionary generation was gone. The next generation said, well, no, we don't need it. So these mass formations, not in defense of the Nazis, but realistically speaking, the Nazis had won World War II. In a generation or two, they would have started mellowing out too, because all radical organizations do it. If they don't, they just burn themselves out into nothing.
That is true.
However, the other way to if you don't want to wait a couple of generations or 2 generations for the mass psychosis start passing, and God only knows how many victims would have happened before the Nazis would have mellowed out,
But you should also start talk about what gave rise to Nazi, which is the hyperinflation and collapse of the currency, the Weimar mark, the mark. That gave rise to Hitler. Currency collapse, very radicalizing.
And it would have been, it was when they say Stalin killed as many, said that's a lie. That is such a blatant lie. Stalin, no, I'm not saying Stalin's some angel, but the gulags were not concentration camps; they were labor camps. They varied extremely from extreme brutality to university campuses. Solzhenitsyn, by the way, was on a university campus. MiG and Sukhoi were formed out of 2 gulags that were university campuses. So it was a very varied system. But the overall purges 3, maybe 5 million people, which is not a small number. But when you compare that to what? Just the concentration camps, Hitler was setting up 12 million people. Nobody remembers the other 6 million people in the camps. Only one particular demographic gets all the mention. Plus the mass murders in Ukraine, in Soviet Union, the mass murders and executions in Greece, in Yugoslavia, and so on. The death toll is gigantic. But the other way to break the mass psychosis is to break the government. Because if you look at all these
Agreed.
adamant anti-Nazis in Germany, the older generation, they were all Hitler Human. They were all Hitler Human. And when the German, when the Nazi government was broken, is when they woke up.
Now, the West did something extremely dangerous, which is set the precedent.
Yeah, the death toll from USSR was horrific. Millions. Yeah, I don't want to start comparing which was worse, Hitler or Stalin. They were both terrible.
That, if you don't like the head of state of another government, you can just go out and...
But you can understand that someone born in Donbass, Russian, would say that Hitler is worse than Stalin. Yeah, it's but both weren't good.
kill them. There's no more. I mean, that kind of quiet, tacit agreement that you don't attack each other's leaders, that is gone, right? And do you think that people in Russia now in the Kremlin are actually like starting to talk about the pros and cons of doing decapitation strikes, like Western style?
Of course. Look, why do people sign the Geneva Convention on POWs? It's not because they're humane. It's not because I want to take care of my enemy's POW.
Because both sides get something out of it.
Yes.
Exactly.
If you don't get that anymore, you're not going to live up to them. Yeah.
Exactly. Your aim is it's not that I want to be humane to the POWs, or maybe I do. Russians have that tendency of being silly like that. We're not part of the garden culture. We're from the jungle. We actually don't shoot people that surrender. But you really, the reason most people sign it is so their POWs, their people that are taking POWs aren't shot or sent off in the minefields and things like that. So yes, absolutely, they get something out of it. Why do you not murder foreign leaders? So you don't get murdered.
Yeah.
It's a give and a take.
And what has Ukraine been trying to do? It's been tried to assassinate Putin. It has done several assassination attempts against various Russian officials. It's more attempts than actual successes, but attempts still count.
I won't kill you, and I won't target your foreign leadership, so you don't target my my leadership. And the West in its absolute...
And by the way, those assassination attempts against Putin and other officials in Moscow, that's another red line that Putin has not enforced at all.
Like ignorance, has actually gone and said, well, led by the Americans, of course, because I would say probably the last 2 adults that ran America were Reagan and Papa Bush, as hard as that is maybe so some people to swallow, but they were the last 2 adults in the room. Everybody says...
Bush Sr. was a monster. He was behind the Kennedy assassination. The outsourcing of U.S. manufacturing. He ran Contra, the atrocities committed across the world, the current 9/11, all of that I attribute to him. He was one of the OG monsters of the conspiracy. There's talk about the Clinton body count, the Bush body count. Bush body count is higher, much higher. And don't speak positively about Bush. He fucked America over more than any president, I think. He was former CIA. He was the first, puppet president. Like Reagan, they basically threatened his life. He was shot and he survived and he basically did what he was told after that. But he wasn't part of the deep state. Bush, he was deep state. He was corrupt to the bone.
Then have been ever more degrading, childlike actors. I mean, look, Reagan, when Reagan saw 2 things interesting about Reagan. The Israelis went into Lebanon, into Beirut. There was no Hezbollah at that point, by the way, in the 1980s.
Yep. Hezbollah was a reaction to Israeli occupation.
Reagan was showing pictures of dead children. And he was so outraged, he called the Israelis and said, get the hell out now. and the Israelis broke and left because they knew that there was either they did it or their relationship with the U.S. was over.
See, like I said, Reagan wasn't deep state, but people don't know about that. People talk about Kennedy assassination all the time, but Reagan assassination attempt. I didn't add the T. I want the AI overview. How many times did they try to assassinate Kennedy? There was only one direct assassination attempt, leaving his Washington, D.C. a lone gunman, of course. When was the Israeli withdrawal from Lebanon? When Reagan. Date. Israeli withdrawal from Lebanon was a phased process after the initial... it was before. Oh, there's no... Might be no coincidence there, but... Yeah. Reagan was like Trump. He was an outsider. That's why they tried to kill him. That's why there's been no assassination attempts against any of the Bush and any of the Clinton and Obama since then, is because those are all deep state individuals tied into the system. Trump was the first outsider since Reagan.
Reagan made the Israelis get out of Beirut back in the 80s. And then Papa Bush, he cut them off because they continued their operations. And Papa Bush just, he cut them off from supply. Supplies got switched back on under Clinton. Biden, quote, just to finish real quick, Biden, quote, cut them off. He kept one shipment away as a PR move, but it front-loaded them so much that it didn't matter. And then everything went back on.
Let's use this as a...
Okay, I'll have a look at that Los Ratones right after this. I'm really enjoying this video so far, but I'll check that out right after.
Segue into talking a little bit about what we are witnessing with Iran, and actually the fact that this morning, yesterday, the Israelis are on a temper tantrum, like one that I haven't seen for a while, including saying that they're cutting off ties with Kaya Kallas because Kallas compared them to apartheid South Africa, which is actually unfair toward apartheid South Africa because they never implemented a genocide on the scale of the Israelis. But are we witnessing some kind of change in this relationship, or is it just the next phase of the great theater that is U.S. hegemonic foreign policy?
I'm tending toward the theater option. We just had a 15-minute break to get coffee and get a Chardonnay, and now we're back. Let's start to watch the next act. On apartheid South Africa, whatever you want to say, but the blacks in apartheid South Africa were citizens. Sure, they were citizens of a second class. They didn't get the resources. A lot of them actually served in the military, but they were citizens. And a few did break through the barriers, but they're more the exception. They're the exception, not the rule. But they were citizens. So they had a certain amount of rights under the Constitution of South Africa. And maybe even without pressure from outside, that would have mellowed out with time, too, as all systems tend. They tend to go to equilibrium sooner or later. Every system, no matter how radical it is, will, over generations, go toward equilibrium because the radicalism is unsustainable in the long term. Regardless of what government.
It's also because change is inevitable. So any system of government over a long enough period, it'll change into something else.
Government you have.
And if you start at the most radical edge, the only way to go is more mellow.
Yeah, these people, the West Bank, Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, they're not citizens. They have no rights. They're not treated as second-class or even third-class citizens or even non-citizen residents.
They're treated as cattle.
They're treated as, let's just listen to what the Israeli government people say. They're animals. They're to be destroyed. They're rats. They're subhumans. The language that the Nazis used against their victims, the new generation is using against their victims. There's about 30% of the Israeli population that are either traditional Jews, most of them were there long before Israel showed up, that look at Israel as an abomination in the traditional Jewish view. Jews are punished by God and cannot have their own government until the Messiah returns, at which point they will get their government. Anything before that is considered blasphemy. So as they say, we were here before the state of Israel, we'll be here after the state of Israel. And then there's progressive Israelis, which there aren't that.
I don't know about that, considering the anger against Israel in the region. It might not be safe to stay there after Israel loses U.S. protection.
Many of, because most of the progressive Israelis turned into rabid psychopaths after 7th of October. But there's progressive Israelis that have kept their head on their shoulders and said, this is wrong, this is mass murder. It's about 30% of the population. The other 70% of the population are rabid psychopaths in one degree or another. Look, the main
I'd say about 30% are radical psychopaths. 40% are propagandized and but they're not hardcore. They're not. The actual monsters is more like 30%.
criticism on Netanyahu is he's not doing enough.
Yeah.
So, just to finish that thought, the opposition is more radical than Netanyahu, and Netanyahu is pretty damn radical.
Yeah, we just watched that earlier tonight. Anyone that replaces Netanyahu is going to be worse than Netanyahu.
So what you get is a choice of, do you want the brown shirts in or the black shirts in?
But again, like, Israel couldn't do all of this if it wasn't for the complete support of the United States.
Okay, we're getting into Israel. So I think I'll end this video here. It was really interesting, and the key point to take away from this is the title here. Russia will strike NATO. I think that's inevitable at this point. Question is when. I expect this year, but how long it will take Putin to get around to that, I don't know. It might take months. It could be tomorrow. That depends on the internal deliberations inside the Kremlin. This will be on YouTube. Like and subscribe. Come watch on Kick or Twitch, and I'll see you next video. Bye.